Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always interesting guests. Today we have Kathleen Krenek, the Executive Director of Next Door Solutions to Domestic Violence, a very weighty subject.
Yes, very much so.
Well, thank you for being on Democratic Television, and we look forward to learning more about what domestic violence is and about Next Door and some of the programs you have to help folks that are in this, and maybe learn how people might be able to volunteer their own time.
Right, right.
But before we do that, let's get to know you a little bit better. You're the Executive Director. Yes. You've been there a while. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Interesting hobbies.
I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and cold. Very cold, and from there I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin, and it was the late 60s, and so you can imagine what I was doing in Madison, Wisconsin. It was very much an activist time.
Yeah.
Then I came down south, or I went down to Nashville, Tennessee, and Memphis, Tennessee, to monitor the civil rights law, the voting rights law. It had been enacted, but it wasn't implemented, of course. So I did that for a while, and then stayed down in the South and worked on organizing community health centers for 2 neighborhoods.
Oh.
And did that for about 15 years, and then started in domestic violence, and I've been working with this issue for 35 years.
Wow. Well, I would say thank you for your service, but I'm going to wait till the end of the show.
Okay.
When you were going to school in Wisconsin, did you see yourself as a activist who would lead a major domestic violence agency? Was there some inkling that that might be your path?
Yes, in high school, actually.
Oh.
I helped organize a walkout for Black history and women's history and history books. And there was something about that feeling that I got of organizing, and we did a walkout, and there was something in me that said, I want this feeling. I want to do this work. I didn't know where I'd go or what I'd be doing, but I knew I wanted this. So it started there, and then of course when you're in Madison, Wisconsin in the 60s, you don't have a choice, but that was a lot around Vietnam War and women's movement, and very rich.
So you were a born community organizer.
I think so, yeah, I think so. It feels good.
Did you have any role models when you were growing up that helped with that kind of inspiration?
Yeah, actually, probably an unusual one, but I grew up in a housing project, and there was an incredibly wise woman who really taught me how to do critical thinking, who helped me realize that just because we were poor didn't mean that we were stupid, talked about the intersection of race and poverty, and so she was absolutely incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite a grounding.
Yes, yes.
So what got you out here to California?
I had been working on the national level in domestic violence. I was the director of the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence in Washington.
Oh.
And I realized that the true work has to happen in community, that the farther away from community you go, the less relevant you are, or that was my opinion.
Yeah.
So I saw the job, I saw the position, and I thought I loved the mission of Next Door, and so I decided I would come out here, and I was hired from Washington and came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long had Next Door Solutions been in existence when you came out here?
It must have been about 31 years before I came.
Oh,
Yeah, we're now, well, next year, and it's not really a celebration in a way, but it's our 45th anniversary.
wow. So this has been an issue that people have been addressing,
Yes.
hopefully longer, but at least in an organized way, through Next Door Solutions.
Yes.
And you came on board. What was the expectation when you were hired that you would do?
At Next Door, our issue at the time was finances. We weren't doing well. We didn't have a good infrastructure. We had services, but they were limited services. A lot of interns, a lot of volunteers, and not that that was bad. There wasn't a lot of supervision or monitoring, and programming was siloed. And so I came in and helped clean up the financing, and then we started working on developing a new philosophy of service. And so we kind of came around that, hired more staff, and became well trained. And
Yeah. So domestic violence, what is it?
domestic violence is, in the legal definition, it's violence against a partner, a former partner, former husband, or current husband. And I use the gender female in my speaking because that is the majority of people being abused in relationships, with the exception of gay relationships. But it's female, and it's well over 90%. So you'll hear me use that. And it's really much more complex than people think it is. Domestic violence is not only the physical abuse, and sometimes that's not there. It's the sexual abuse, sexual coercion, it's financial abuse, it's control, very heavy control. You're going to wear what I want you to wear. I check your meter on the car to see how far you've gone. If you've gone too far, I know something's wrong. So it's very controlling behavior, a great deal of isolation. So it's a combination of behaviors, and the purpose is control.
So the stereotype of it's exemplified by a black eye is absolutely not always the case, at least.
Correct. And lots of women will come to us and say, even when there is physical violence, they'll say, the physical stuff goes away, the emotional and psychological stuff doesn't.
So some of the, I guess, stereotypes of women in these circumstances has people go, well, why don't they just leave?
Yeah, we hear that a lot, and there are lots of reasons women don't leave. Economic reasons, if you think about our area and housing, to leave that relationship may mean homelessness, and they may be more afraid of what would happen on the street than they are in their home. There are religious reasons, there are community reasons, there are cultural reasons, there are fear issues. 80% of women who are killed while they're leaving the relationship or after they've left. It's a very dangerous time. So, and they know that, or in divorce, he's going to get the kids, and he may very well. So there are a myriad of reasons that women don't leave. And they're very courageous women. Women who stay are resilient and courageous, and people tend to think that they're weak, and they don't leave because they're weak and they like it, and none of that is true.
And you mentioned children, and
Yes.
that's got to be a big factor because children are there too.
Absolutely. And it's the reason women stay, and it's the reason women leave. They stay because they're afraid for their kids. They're afraid he's going to get custody and that he'll mistreat the children. And then when they realize what is happening to their kids, they no more. I've got to get out of here.
So I know there isn't an answer to this, but let me put this to you and have you break this myth.
Right.
What does a typical domestic violence family look like?
There is no typical. You know, I mean, and that's a good thing to get out, because people tend to want it to be the other person, the other community. You know, it's an ethnic group, it's a racial group, it's a class, income district, you know, so they think of it as everybody but themselves. We've had physicians in our shelter, we've had engineers in our shelter, we've had all kinds of people come to our community office, and they're all colors, they're all races, they're all religious backgrounds or none, they're all ages. And so the myth about a certain community having more domestic violence or a certain nationality having more than You know, I think about our country and how violent we are, and then we, you know, say, well, it's Mexicans, you know, or so, you know, we have a lot to do in that area of education.
And I assume that's a big part of what Nextdoor tries to do is educate people about the fact that it does exist next door. I mean, the name isn't accidental.
Yes, yes. And with the football players, that's certainly been showing up, that it can be anybody. It is about power and control, and it's not an interpersonal issue. It's not, I slap her, she may slap me, and then it's done. It's not spontaneous. So it goes on in the home regularly, the abusive behavior, so that the woman is just always off guard and very unpredictable.
So what do you do to someone who calls Nextdoor Solutions, perhaps calls your hotline? How are they handled? What can they expect?
The first thing we ask is, are you safe right now? If you're not safe, where can we call you, or can you call us back on a safe phone? Or can we call you back and say we're Tupperware or Avon or whatever will help her to be safe at that moment? We'll then do a risk assessment. Are you in danger right now? Are you afraid right now? Can we get you out of the house? What is it that you need from us if it's critical at that moment? If it's not and she's in a safe place, we walk through the things that are happening to her so we can assess the risk and then help her with safety measures. And that may be coming to our shelter. Often it's coming to our shelter. And getting her there is sometimes, it takes a lot of maneuvering. Sometimes it's the police will bring her, or we send a taxi, or we hide her car when it gets there. So it's very difficult, it's very complex, it's very serious.
So you really don't have one response. Someone calls up, you need to, or your staff person needs to see, is this a 911 circumstance?
Right.
Which requires an immediate response? Right. Or is it something that can be done with more careful planning?
Right, yes.
And then all of that factors such as the kids, so it's not just a question of her getting in a taxi cab if there's 3 little ones still in the house.
Right, and often you can't tell the kids that you're going because they'll tell the other parent because they don't understand what's going on. So it's very difficult. And then if they use the shelter, they come to a very different place. They think they're coming to a place with metal beds and armory-like, and we're very home-like. It's small, it's 22 people max, and it's very loving and very caring and very warm, and it's a home.
So you have places that people can go to. I assume people don't know where they are. Maybe they don't even know in the neighborhood that that's what they are. Yes,
absolutely. It's in an undisclosed location, the shelter. We have a large community office that provides services, and it's public. We're the only one that does walk-in service. So anytime there's that window of opportunity that's open and she comes, we're ready. We don't do appointments. Just come in and we'll make sure we'll see you today regardless.
Got it. Okay. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I want to learn more about Nextdoor's services, programs, and what we're going to do about this scourge.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Jerry McNerney. I'm the newest elected member of the United States Congress from Northern California. I represent the 11th Congressional District. I got involved in politics because my son encouraged me to do so. I'd never thought about doing that before in my life. And here I am now in Congress helping to change the direction of our country. If you would like to get involved in your country, we need you, we need your help, the community needs you. Please contact your local Democratic Party at 408-445-9500 and help make a difference. Thank you.
Welcome back to Democratic Television, and our guest, Kathleen Krenek, the Executive Director of Nextdoor Solutions for Domestic Violence. You've been the director for a long time, and it sounds like there's a lot of good programs in place now. We were talking about if somebody has a problem, they can call your hotline, and a professional will help them assess what their issues are and what they can do about it.
Right, yes. We're very clear that we partner with women. We don't take over, we don't suggest, We work with her in partnership to help her. She has a lot of wisdom, and we have some knowledge, and together we can walk through it and help.
And yet there are things that women may not know, like you don't tell your spouse that you're gonna leave or whatever.
Yes, absolutely, and that's one of the first things. If they say, I really want to get out of here, we say, well, how bad is it? And if it's not crisis at the moment, you may want to do a little bit more planning. We can help walk through that, and then at a safer time, and don't tell him, because that's a really dangerous time.
Especially, I assume, if there are kids that may or may not understand.
Absolutely. And they, you know, they love both parents, so they're very confused about what's going on. And often they blame mom because they see this as, if mom hadn't done this, daddy wouldn't have done that. So it's very confusing for them.
And very sad.
And very sad and very troubling.
So Nextdoor does a lot of different things. You don't just take those crisis calls. You guys do advocacy, you work on legislation.
Yes.
Are there things that you're working on now that, if they were in place, would help? Or are there good laws in place that just need to be enforced?
I think that's more the issue. I think we have enough laws, actually, but I think we're not implementing them. And that's the case with most of what we do. We have tenant rights laws now for battered women. They can't be kicked out. They can break the lease. But people don't know about them, and they're not being widely implemented. There's no infrastructure to implement them. So legislation is difficult, and it doesn't serve every woman. You know, it's a rather rigid piece of legislation, and her difficulties, or women are not, it's not just one type of personality or situation. So the community organizing, I think, is a better way, and I think that's the trend and the new way we need to go. Domestic violence is going to end when a community decides to change its culture.
What does a community look like when it's gone through changes, when it is making a statement? What does that feel like, and does that exist anywhere?
Well, I don't know that it exists anywhere, although we are trying it. It means that people are more interested in negotiation than domination. So it's more than, because gender equity is the issue. Respect for women, respect for girls, working on teen dating violence, men indicating this is not acceptable behavior, this is not manhood. So if you get everybody saying that all the time and raising this, we will find a change in culture. And that's what we're looking for. It's really neighborhood by neighborhood.
Well, you mentioned a number of groups earlier. One of them are athletes, male athletes, and males become involved in athletic programs as teenagers and become into professional sports. Are you finding more cooperation with coaches at all levels and other sports?
No, not really. I think they want to think that it doesn't happen in that sport, it only happens there. And they think that that they can kind of cover that up. It's not part of what they do. And, you know, it's kind of ignoring it and pretending that it's not there. So what really, I hate to say this, but what helped is that it came out with Ray Rice. And that brought it to the forefront.
Yeah, right. Very dramatically and horribly.
Yes.
But I think then more people feel like, oh, it is closer to Nextdoor than I was ready to acknowledge.
Yes, and our calls went up, and the women who reached out, those numbers rose, because, and what we learned was often their partners would tell them, I'll Ray Rice you.
Oh.
Yeah, or I'll Ray McDonald you.
Wow. Very specific stuff.
Yes, yes, and she knows what that means.
You also had mentioned young people and teen dating and all that. What kind of programs are out there to try to make people aware that it's not acceptable? Right.
We're doing a program right now. Instead of being a talking head to kids, which doesn't work, we found that for many years now, Nextdoor has taken on kids mobilizing kids. So we hire them, they're paid, and they begin to work in community or broadly, and they begin to talk about teen dating violence, and then they go to gender equity, and they begin to talk about what would the world look like if we were all equal. And if they can mobilize a few, who will mobilize a few, who will mobilize a few, that can change the kids. And we need to go younger as well.
That sounds like something you may have learned from your community organizing days in Madison.
Absolutely. It has to be deep-rooted in cultural change of norms. Otherwise, it's never going to go away.
Well, and it certainly makes sense to start with young people,
Yes.
but it does exist, as you said, in many different cultures.
Yes.
Do you have any programs that that address cultural issues?
We are culturally sensitive. We have a language service so we can access any language that women need. The women who come to us and kids mirror the county's population. So we get a high variety of women, and sometimes we'll send them over to ACCI, which is Asian Americans for Community Involvement, or Maitri, which is Southeast or South Asian women. So we all kind of work together to do that. So at our shelter, we have separate cooking utensils for if there's a religious need for that, a prayer room, if there's a need for that, specialized food, if there's a need for that. So we're conscious of that, but we're not specific to any one culture. We have bilingual staff. All staff are bilingual, Spanish, English. So we're prepared, I think, and we're very sensitive to the cultural needs.
So people who are going through this, women, mostly women who are going through this, are not only physically scarred, they're emotionally scarred. Do you have programs to help women heal from this? Is that a service you have?
Yes, we have 14 support groups through the community, and women talking to women is just very soothing and safe, and it's a way to talk to somebody who's gone through the same experience, and they want that. And we have one in Palo Alto, we have one in Los Gatos, we have one at the jail. We have several in our office, and our job is to get out into the community so they can access that in a safe place in their own community. But that's really what works. We have a stream of programming that helps women go from crisis to self-sufficiency. So we have a self-sufficiency program that helps with financial literacy, banking, resume writing, job seeking, clothing, and 30% so far have gotten jobs, which is pretty high for us. So
that's great.
Yes.
Now you mentioned most of the people that you see are women, but you also mentioned domestic violence certainly exists in same-sex relationships. Do you have programs to help folks in those circumstances?
Unfortunately not, although we, again, are very sensitive to the language we use when we're answering our phone, whether or not it's friendly to the population, but we're beginning to think about that more and more. We really need to go to that community to figure out what their needs and wants are, and it may not be our program. It may be helping set up something that's specific to the population. So, and we want to work on that.
So you are self-critical too. You try to do assessments and what can we do better?
Absolutely. We're doing impact work now to determine our impact in the community and and for the women who use our services, and then how can we do something better.
I know along those lines, and this is kind of a grisly thing to bring up, the community tries to study situations that have led to death, to murder.
Yes.
And what kinds of things do you learn from that are helpful for the future? And do you see that number shrinking, or is it fluctuating?
It fluctuates considerably, so there's no one way to determine trend. But what we do see is consistently the women were on their way out. That's the one thing, and if we had the money, we would do the campaign. Pick up the phone before you leave. Don't talk about it. But in the death review, that's what they found over and over and over again. And again, it's all races, all ethnic groups, all income groups.
Now, some people might think, well, if I get a restraining order, that will help. Is that a good thing to do, or is that, well, it's obviously case by case?
Yeah. Yes, I think it is for some women.
Yeah.
And so in our risk assessment and safety planning, that might be a good activity for her to become involved in. But that's also complex. If those persons aren't responded to when they need help and they have the order, if when responded to, there's nothing done, if it is not, there's no accountability with it, then nothing is going to happen, and it's a piece of paper. If he just moves through all boundaries and he doesn't care what happens, or he's very dangerous and he's going to walk through anything, then that may not be the best. And finally, if he's going to react in a way, if she knows he's going to react very poorly and go after her again, then it's not. So it is a remedy for some women,
Yeah.
and it's not for others.
Got it. So the assessment is key.
Absolutely. And then we offer different ways.
So we have about 2 minutes left. If people want to look at your website, it would be helpful now to share it. And also importantly, if you have a hotline number
Yes.
you could give out, I think we should share that.
Yes. Our hotline number is 408-279-2962. It's never gone down in 45 years.
Wow.
And it's live voice 24 hours.
Wow.
Our website is www.nextdoor.org.
Okay. And if people want to volunteer, maybe make a financial contribution,
Yes.
I assume that's something that would help?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like all nonprofits, we're underfunded, so,
Yeah.
and over capacity.
Yeah.
Yes, they can go to our website. They can see all of our
Okay.
programs. They can donate. They can call us from there. And we try to match the volunteers to what they really want to do. So, and we love having volunteers.
So the website, you feel real good about it, gives a lot of detail.
Yes. And we're going to be having more interactive where it actually shows the shelter, the inside, so that women who want to come will see what they're coming to, and the public can see. There won't be any people there, of course, but
Right.
in explaining each of our programs.
So, well, Next Door Solutions is helping play a role in creating solutions in the community.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your work and the work of your organization.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thank you for watching Democratic Television. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org, and help make a difference.